Welcome back to the Unstaged Success podcast. Today we'll be speaking with Victoria Tonelli, the founder of Victoria Tonelli Designs. Some of you may also recognize her from HGTV's The Property Brothers. Victoria, we're so excited to sit down with you. Let's dive in. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you into this industry.
Okay, well, how much time do we have? Gosh, okay, I guess the short answer is that my trajectory or path into the industry definitely wasn't a straightforward one. Initially, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. That's what I was going to school for. I was gunning for that. And I was studying for my LSATs, and there was a moment where I'm like, is this exactly what I want to do, or should I take a pause? And I decided to take that pause. And I'm so thankful that I did, because it led me into interior design. It's always something that I wanted to do. Like my sister was watching Arthur when she was young, and I was watching Cityline and obsessing over
Wow.
Gluckstein. Like Brian Gluckstein's like a well-known Toronto designer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I had a huge crush on him. I now know that he has no interest in me, but but I had a crush on him at the time, and I was like, you know what? My big dream is to be on Cityline as a designer. Like that, all of a sudden, as a little kid, was my dream. So I kind of paused as I was going through this law school preparation, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to stop for a second and see what I want to do. And that led to me reaching out to every single designer on Cityline and saying, you know, can I just give you my time? I don't want to get hired. I know I don't have experience. I just want to give you my time. I had one person write me back. And that one person kind of changed the trajectory of my life pretty much.
Wow.
I really fell in love with design. I wasn't doing the glamorous things at the time. Like I was changing, like emptying the dishwasher or like organizing the samples in the back. But there were the moments where she asked me, what's your opinion on this? Or can you go out and grab whatever for the styling shoot? And I'm like, okay, I'm so passionate about this. There's something here. And then I just kind of fell into it, and I started pursuing design and finding out that I really wanted to do design for TV. And then the Property Brothers stuff kicked in, and the rest is history.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we all follow you on Instagram and have, of course, noticed your recent work with one of my favorite people, being Kris Jenner. So I just wanted to know how you think that you've captured the attention of such influential people, because it's not Kris Jenner. There's so many, I want to say celebrities that you've done work with from your Instagram. And I just want to know how you got their attention.
So a lot of that was through the show Celebrity IOU.
Okay.
And I think what I think just generally gets people's attention and what people feel is your passion for something.
Right.
So I really don't take my position as an interior designer as a job. It really becomes something that I'm passionate about. And I have worked with designers or overseen designs over the years where they see it as a job. Like they can pick the tile or the countertop and the fabric online and be done with it. Whereas for me, I really start to live and breathe everything that I take on. So I think that was something that they took notice of and appreciated. And I think it worked out for those projects.
Yeah, that's awesome. Was there a project in specific that was really special to you that stood out in your career?
So the Kris Jenner project, actually, I don't know if you guys saw that.
I could imagine. She's one of my favorites. How was she?
She was amazing. Like all my experiences were amazing. And that was through like the Property Brothers show. And it started off as such a small reno, and it really exploded into this major overhaul of this backyard, like bigger than we would have ever imagined, bigger than the show had ever even taken on. And to be like overseeing the trades behind the scene and being so involved in the construction and having these group of people that were so passionate as well. Like TV is a boot camp pretty much. Like you're getting things done that in the real world people wouldn't even fathom. So you really have to have a good team behind you. And that one, obviously the Kris Jenner thing helped too to make it super cool, but it was like, in terms of design, it was something that I was really proud to be a part of.
Oh, of course, I'm sure. I couldn't imagine. Awesome. You've talked a little bit about the Property Brothers and being on TV. So I just wanted to know, how did you always think that or want to get into TV as well? Or was it something that just kind of fell into your lap and you ran with it?
A mixture of both. So when I worked for that design firm, I realized that they're working on projects for a full year before they even start seeing like any semblance of a before and after. So what I did like about TV is that more immediate gratification.
Mm-hmm.
So I started becoming almost addicted to that fast-paced
Pace.
yeah, and I saw that a little bit. So that the woman that I ended up working for was Kimberly Seldon. She was on City Line, so I saw a little bit of a glimpse of the TV stuff. So I always kind of was in my head thinking, you know what, I want to do something TV related. And I went for coffee with this girl randomly. She was a friend of mine at the time, but we weren't super close. And she just mentioned randomly, there's this show called Property Brothers. And I'm like, I have no idea what that is. What is that? And it's these two twins and whatever. And I had no idea about the show really at the time. And then I went in for this interview. And then from there, I knew that I kind of wanted to more or less stay in TV.
Yeah, that's awesome. What exactly do you do with the Property Brothers?
So it's definitely been an evolution. Like I started off as the design assistant.
Okay.
And I've since moved to behind the scenes overseeing a lot of design and construction. And that's a huge part of my role, is just making sure that our vision is being portrayed, but also like timeline is such a big thing. And then also making sure that the quality remains the same and represents the company. So that's more or less what I do.
Excellent. My turn. What does a day in a life look like for you?
Oh my God, it's just never the same. Like I don't have a typical day. Like what my day is going to be like tomorrow is going to be so different than what my day is going to be in 2 weeks. Like I'm flying to LA for another project. So it's always different. And that's what I love about it. Like I feel like having the same thing happen every single day or going into the office every day is something wouldn't be good for my personality. So the fact that it's always different, you guys can probably appreciate the fact that all your
Yes.
days are so
100%.
different.
We were just talking about that the other day, like with all the projects that we have going on, whether it be staging or design, or we're at a conference, or we're doing a podcast, like we like to change it up and be, as dynamic as we can. So we totally get that. I think if you're a designer, you share that kind of quality and trait. You mentioned that you do travel quite a bit. So you're Toronto, LA, New York, all around. Do you find it challenging to travel back and forth between all your design projects? How do you manage it all?
Yes. So I was traveling at one point, but right before COVID hit, we had a project in every different city. So it was like, we'd finish a project immediately that night, fly out to a different city. And that was it was amazing. Like it was so exciting. I wouldn't necessarily want to do it again just because it's taxing and like other things inevitably, kind of struggle, like personal life. I've missed my grandma's birthday and things like that start to take a toll. But like, there was another season where I just did fully in LA where I can kind of plant my roots and plan my life a little bit. That was fun. But I love being home in Toronto, especially for the next little bit.
You mentioned missing, your family. I guess a lot of people don't understand or who are thinking about starting a design business. There is a lot of sacrifice. Do you find that now that you've grown that there is less sacrifice though? Or are you still finding yourself so busy that you are still missing out on important family moments?
I think it's so important for me to be in the moment when I'm in the moment. So I think before I used to be with my family and friends and I'd be on my phone and I'd be texting and emailing someone and never fully present. Like my sister would always have conversations like with me and she'd be like, you're somewhere else. Like, where are you? Like, cause I was just never present. So I think what I've made a huge change with is that when I'm with my family or whoever, I'm with them. I'm not on my phone. I mean, I try not to be, but I also have more boundaries too. Like I still get very engulfed in my work, but there is a time of night where I'm just like, you know what, I'm going to turn it off. It's all going to be there tomorrow. And I think that balance is something that I learned when I got older and more confident actually in what I do.
That's great advice. So it's definitely something that I try to do, but it's hard to be present, but we're practicing it. We're practicing it. And I feel like, when you do work on the projects and you're fully present, you're better at it, as opposed to doing it when you're in those family events and you're not giving it your best. You're being, it's almost like you're frustrated. So that's great advice. Last question for me is, I'm sure you're managing several projects at once. Do you manage them all on your own? Do you have a team who supports you? How do you find managing all of them?
Yeah, so I usually have a team, and it all depends. So if it's in different cities, now I've kind of have my go-to team members. Let's say in New York, for example, I'll have a contractor in New York, a design assistant that I'll hire on for that project, and then I'll have in-house people based out of Toronto, depending on how busy I am, that I'll keep on and work with in that way. But if I am taking on a show, like I will be overseeing a few people. I think at one point in LA, we were at 8 people that were, in charge of getting this done. And so I had a team of like around 8 people to kind of oversee.
Great. Awesome.
What does the design process look like for you from the beginning to towards the end or almost completion? Like, what is the design process?
It's not pretty. It's not like this polished design process. I'll never pretend to be that. I think as a creative person, there's, I will spend hours debating, going back and forth. And like the other day, I asked my contractor, he had fully drywalled and finished a space, and I asked him to open up the walls because I wasn't happy with something. And then he hated me for like 3 days. And then he was like, okay, fine, it was the right decision. And, there's lots of that. And lots of managing relationships. And I don't know, my vision usually at the start is pretty specific. So I always go back to that. Like I usually have a board that I start with and I always put a few words down even of like what the design is going to look like. And anytime I'm making a decision, I go back to that. And that usually helps me make decisions quite quickly, that I have that initial vision in mind as I go through the process. But yeah, it's definitely, it can be sloppy sometimes, but at the end, I think we
all
get
comes
there.
together.
Because we're all in the same industry, I find it so interesting to find out what inspires your vision, and it might be different than what inspires our vision. So what is your favorite design style?
So I will say this, like, I feel like I have so many different favorites, but for me, I always try to make something feel timeless and classic, but then also feel relevant and edgy and have that twist to it, that it doesn't feel stale. But I don't want to design a space and then in 10 years, someone be like, oh, I hate this. It's so on trend. It was on trend 10 years ago. I hate trends. That's something that I try not to play. Yeah. So that would be my thing, is timeless and classic, but then also finding ways to make it feel edgy and youthful and relevant.
Do you find that the style changes it varies on where you are and what city you're in?
Like LA is definitely more beachy, coastal kind of vibe, but I feel like Toronto wanted a lot of that too at one point. But I think generally people want a lot of the same things at the same time, like really dark floors all went out at one point. Like no one really wanted those dark floors, and everyone wanted this light wood. And I feel like slowly we're transitioning out of that. So I feel like a lot of those wants were consistent in all the places that we were working.
How is he, like, you, with all your posts on Instagram, like everybody must want to work with you. How do you manage, leads, and are you taking on everyone, or are there certain criteria that you set that people need to meet before you take them on as a client?
I definitely try and focus on luxury residential. So I'm also trying to focus on, taking on full houses or condos or what have you. It's not really just a living room or just a kitchen. It's that I'm overseeing the aesthetic of entire homes. So that's something. And yes, I am selective, I would say, in what projects I take on, because I'm still managing the other aspects to my career that are TV oriented. So when it comes to just taking on private projects, like right now I have 2, and I'm good with that because I have so many other things kind of working
on your plate.
Yeah.
And how do you say no to a client? Because that can be a difficult conversation. How do you explain to them that they're not, you guys aren't gonna work together?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing where I think myself and a client wouldn't be compatible is if they just wanted their bedroom done or they just wanted their living room done, which not to say that I wouldn't do it. And also like timing wise is something I usually talk to them about, is that a lot of people want it right away.
Right.
And
Yep.
it's like,
I find that too.
Yeah. And it's hard to make them understand that I'm already booked for the next 8 months. But sometimes people are like, okay, fine, like we'll wait. And then I'm like, well, in 8 months, I don't know exactly if we will be the best fit because X, Y, and Z. But
right.
Yeah, sometimes those conversations can be difficult, but I also love the idea of helping people. And I did that on City Line a little bit, like people that can't necessarily afford luxury, how to point them in the right direction to still get that look and feel. So I did like a segment on City Line that was about 4 women that had kind of lost their way. And it was about renovating their spaces to give them a space that was just their own. And then they did like a fashion overhaul for them too, and an emotional overhaul. Like they had a bunch of different components, but that stuff I also love doing. It's not typically the luxury projects that I do, but the fact that it's giving back to people that could otherwise not afford it or even be able to fathom it is something that I like to take on.
Amazing. What are 4 tips that you would offer in terms of design advice that could be applied to any style and any budget? Your 4 go-to tips that you think people will be able to apply to their homes.
So one would be to take inventory of what you have already. I think people are so quick to, throw things out and go get everything new. It's like really take inventory. Like for me, I have stuff shoved away at my parents' house in their basement of all these like beautiful cushions. I was right about to buy a ton of new ones. And I'm like, I already have these. Why would I spend money on that? You don't always need to break the bank. 2 would just be to reorganize a space. Like that doesn't cost any money, but to actually take a second and say, how do I want this space to function for me? And just reorganize what you already have. What's another one? I would say put together a vision of what you want, kind of like what I said my process was. Like really do your research off the top. This is the style I like. And I go through Pinterest even for hours to find inspiration, and then always go back to that. Like that's the style that I wanted, because I think there's so many choices out there that people can get really overwhelmed. So always kind of going back to your original vision and trying not to veer away from that would be a good one. And then also just trust your gut. Like I think a lot of people will second guess themselves, including me. And I almost always go back to my first choice. So it's like, so it's all this time that you put into it. And sometimes your initial first choice is the best one. Sometimes it's not, but more or less, I think, trust yourself and what your taste is.
That's great advice.
Yeah,
Any other questions?
definitely.
I'm not going to let you go that quick. No. We had another designer on, and she was just fabulous. I want to ask you the same question because her answer was it was shocking, but it was a good answer. So this was a question Vanessa asked, which is I can't remember. Sorry. But it was, what is your favorite store? Like if you were to buy pieces for clients, where do you source from? And what's your favorite place to source?
If you had to pick like one of all like the kind of suppliers that are well known or
Okay.
I can tell you what the other designer said.
Yeah, now I want to know what the other girls.
She said Kijiji.
Yeah.
Really?
She said Kijiji. And it's funny because even us, when we're in a pinch and we need something unique, we've gone to Facebook Marketplace and voila, you get this amazing piece that you wouldn't think of.
Yeah. What I love about that too is that a lot of people are doing all the same things and sourcing from all the same places. So doing something like that is so smart for you to just differentiate the design. I will say, I might regret this after, but I think CB2 in that.
I knew you were going to say that. How did I know you were going to say that?
That's exactly what I said.
CB2 is coming out with some pieces.
Yeah.
I'm in the process of doing my place, and everything is from CB2. I just keep gravitating towards that website. I cannot get off of it.
They're like forward designing. Like I feel like they're taking design into this direction that's really captivating people's attention.
Yeah. I think they're taking really high-end luxury pieces and finding a way to make them affordable.
Yes.
which is what I love. Like they're taking those like $8,000 chairs and finding like similar lines in the chairs that they're designing so everyone can buy it.
Yeah.
Quality wise is something that I always watch out for, but in terms of style and accessibility, I would say CB2 is killing it.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's talk about design trends. So where do you think design trends are headed? Yeah.
So I'm seeing a shift away from, that beachy coastal look. I'm starting to see people veer back towards the richer colors.
Yes.
That has more depth, as opposed to just like the light woods and the white walls, which still is beautiful, but there is
Victoria's like, I just designed
that's
my
what
whole
I know.
house. She
No,
just
but I
said
still
white.
love that.
White.
I still love
What do you
that.
think of the color Merlot? What is your opinion of the color Merlot? It can also be called scarlet. It's that deep burgundy, red.
Yeah.
What is your opinion?
I like it. I think in the right space.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't think I would put that in my. Do you have a Merlot, Victoria? Did you just buy a Merlot chair? Is that what?
No, I'm the big
no.
proponent of
I
the
love
dark, rich tones. Like I love deep green and like royal blues and like purple, deep purples and things like that. Like I love that.
I'm like white.
Yeah.
White.
Beige.
Oh, that's
Everything's
key.
white, black.
A little bit of black.
That's it.
Yeah.
It is great
Yeah.
too. It's very tasteful and classic.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
great to hear you say that these rich tones are starting to
coming
come back. And it's good that our audience who's listening is also of that, is hearing it, because trends change all the time. Nothing is right or wrong. It's what really gravitates towards you and your style.
Yeah, totally. And to bring trends in, it's not that you have to get those expensive pieces. So like bringing trends into your space through the pillows or accessories that you can swap out versus your big investment pieces like a couch. Like I think it's the move to get a very neutral couch that you won't get sick of, and then bring the trends in with the pillows or things that aren't.
Yes. Yeah. That's
Then
what
you can
we say
change
all
it
the
up.
time too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's great advice. What is your favorite design style?
Style, I think we could just go back to the same thing of like the classic, elegant design that always feels elevated, but then adding like an edgy twist. So I don't know if I would name that style anything in particular. It's the Victoria Tonelli design style.
It sure is.
Yeah. But I just think that anything that feels too trendy to me I feel like I haven't succeeded. I just always want that timeless elegance, but then always mixed in with something that feels new and exciting.
Yeah. And relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, any other questions,
I have
ladies?
one last question, actually.
Okay.
Do you have a guess for what the color of 2023 is going to be? Because you
that's a
said that you were thinking that the dark tones, rich tones were coming in. What
That's
do
a
you
good
think
question.
the color is going to be?
Maybe it's the Merlot.
Oh,
Please!
Maybe
Please let it be.
Merlot.
Let it be
We're gonna
Merlot.
influence it right
Thank
now.
you. You heard it
Yeah.
from our celebrity designer here on the Unstaged Success Podcast. Merlot is the color of the year potentially for 2023.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Victoria,
you.
for spending your
Yeah.
time.
Thank you.